Hello, and welcome to the Critical Path Institute podcast. Our goal for this podcast is to connect the dots among our core competencies in regulatory science, biomarkers, data management and standards, clinical outcome assessments, and modeling and analytics, and how we accelerate drug development. CPath created this podcast for researchers, clinicians, and industry and regulatory professionals with the hope that these conversations and the resources we share will advance your efforts and partnerships to improve global health.
You're listening to part 2 of our 20th anniversary podcast. So let's dive back in and continue exploring CPath's legacy and what comes next. What we've described up to this point, what you've described up to this point is really highlights obviously what CPath has accomplished and how we've been able to do that. So how do you think about the next couple of decades? What are you excited about, and how do you think about us taking what we've learned in our first 2 decades into the future?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, we're in a true inflection point for medical product development for the next century. And these types of collaborations that we run are more essential now than ever, because we're entering into areas where the classic paradigm of drug development and regulation from the 60s and 70s truly no longer applies. We're dealing with types of products that stand to benefit individuals that have a very unique mix of factors, from genetic factors to biological factors to exposure factors to geographic factors. And so if you think about it, that stands to potentially become the new paradigm for truly personalized medicine. But if drug development needs to be that personalized, the old paradigm of large clinical trials may not apply anymore. That doesn't mean that we lower the bar and we just allow anecdotal evidence to be the bar. That's not what this is about, and that's certainly nothing that FDA supports or the European Medicines Agency supports or that industry would support, and certainly not the public. But we need to think about a completely new paradigm. So in this era of advanced therapeutic medical products with gene editing, gene therapies, RNA therapies, oligonucleotides, it's cell therapies, we need to think about a new scientific paradigm for how to make the evidence actionable. So that's an area where collaborations are going to be essential. The other area where collaborations are going to be essential has to do with the need to have truly predictive accuracy for the translation of the lab to the clinic. There is a very clear understanding that we need to have human-centric drug development. And so there's a lot of efficiency that can be gained by a lot of new technologies that combine computational models with complex in vitro models, perfusion systems, organs on a chip, organoids, etc., that have the potential ability to truly revolutionize the predictive accuracy from the lab to the clinic. And in doing that, we can truly reduce, refine, and potentially even replace the use of animals in drug development. And this is another plug for an upcoming episode where we're going to drill into that topic with Nicholas King. That's number 2, the whole translational science revolution. Number 3, with some of those situations in which it's impractical or even unethical to think about the old paradigm of classic clinical trials. There's an opportunity to start looking at what real-world evidence can actually provide. And real-world evidence needs to be based on real-world data. But the real-world data need to be sound and need to be reliable for the real-world evidence to become even more actionable over time. So these types of collaborations that focus on integrating data, diagnosing the value of the data, making sure that there's a loop to continuously learn on how to generate the data and collect the data in a way that make the data even more usable and more valuable, is certainly an opportunity for collaborations and how to understand what the evidence is actually telling you. Linked to that is the entire notion of artificial intelligence in drug development. That is one of the most exciting hot topics right now, but at the same time, it can be a nothing burger, because if you just ask the question AI in drug development, that's similar to asking the question, how do we use computers in drug development? I mean, it could mean everything and nothing, but fundamentally, how to understand if an AI solution is actually telling you reliable results on which to base sound decision-making for drug development and regulatory decision-making is a tremendous opportunity for collaborations that can set up the evidentiary considerations that are going to be needed to properly evaluate if those AI approaches are scientifically sound and are spitting out the correct information that is needed to support the types of decisions that they claim to support, but also their ethical application in dealing with things like how to properly address bias and other things that are critical when understanding AI in drug development. But then the other thing is, the other classical component of the paradigm is the fact that people in clinical trials have to go on a frequent basis, on some cadence, from their houses to the clinics to get the dose of the medication, get assessed, get tested, get lab work done, get imaging done. And that limits the accessibility of the population that in the real world stands to benefit from the new medications, from actually participating in generating the evidence about the efficacy and safety of those therapies. So in comes a term called decentralized clinical trials. And decentralized clinical trials cannot really happen without a major application of digital health technologies. Digital health technologies that can span from everything from having the typical instruments that you would fill out on paper properly deployed in electronic forms to actual devices that capture data that can be used to better understand what is happening with the daily activities of an individual, to devices that are actually capturing biomarker data. So digital health technologies is another area where these types of collaborations are going to be key for the next 100 years. And the wrapper around these topics is the fact that there's no way that a single entity will provide all the answers to all those questions. That's why collaborations are going to continue to be key, and the participation of industry, academia, the living experience that carries the voice of what really matters, and of course the participation of regulators is going to be a fundamental component of this. And we stand to look at a completely new paradigm of how to do drug development in the current century.
So I just want to highlight and maybe connect a couple of the points that you just raised, because I think, as you just mentioned and you just described, how CPATH can participate, lead, facilitate the discussions and the collaborations that are really needed to implement these new technologies and new ways of evaluating and conducting drug development. When I think about the combination, let's say, of real-world data, real-world evidence, and decentralized trials and digital health technologies, there's the benefit, obviously, of a new way of evaluating and potentially a more effective way of evaluating the effectiveness of therapies. But the impact that has on society is indescribable, right? That allows for a complete paradigm shift in how clinical trials are conducted, because it allows for rural populations and the diversity of individuals that live in rural populations to participate in clinical trials, which simply they're unable to do today because they don't live near a clinical trial site. I think the fact that it opens up that paradigm shift is tremendous, and knowing that CPATH has the opportunity to help facilitate what is needed in order to make that happen is something that, as I think about the next 20 years, I get really proud of and excited about, like, how can we make that happen? So just some exciting things to think about when we think about the broader impact of what a change in the drug development process actually has on people in society.
Yeah. So such a relevant point. So the first thing is that, of course, we're indexing a lot on the exciting science and the innovation and all that. None of that can happen without a very strong operational discipline. So this is where I'll take a bit of a detour and just highlight you, because you've been the force behind the entire operational discipline that we have that allows the science to thrive and the regulatory innovation to happen. But also, and you've been recognized as a woman leader, fully deserved, and we are very excited about that. But fundamentally, that also has a ramification to your point about what this means to society. Not only is this a way to attract new generations to fields that may be struggling a little bit to attract people today, but also it stands to provide meaningful participation in the entire enterprise to a lot of populations that don't have that opportunity today. And that lack of participation may be one of the biggest reasons why there's such a trust issue right now with a lot of aspects about science and drug development, etc. The solution is not to just talk at people and vomit facts at people, but have them meaningfully get involved in the process and having them have the chance to participate and shape, not just participate, but shape how drug development is thought about, what things to measure, what really matters to the people that need some transformation in their lives for the diseases that they have, what makes it really easier to participate in the trials and have a positive experience, how to empower them to be stewards of maximizing the value of the data that they provide to the scientific research endeavor, and also transform the entire job market for those individuals that could be the link between the communities, drug developers in academia, and those that are going to be running the trials in those settings, at those places. So this has an opportunity to really have a societal transformative effect that could truly change the world for the better.
Yeah, that it truly is tremendous. I think, the patient voice is what you were just articulating, and the patient voice being integrated into drug development, and the terminology of patient-focused drug development, PFDD. CPATH has a annual impact conference, and our global impact conference is in September. We just completed our 2025 global impact conference, and as of today, we are already planning our 2026 Global Impact Conference. But in this year's conference, one of the main themes and one of the main aspects of that conference that really resonated with the participants was the focus on patient-focused drug development. And so, can you maybe talk a little bit about, how we want to further enhance and ensure the integration of that as we navigate the next 20 years?
Yeah, absolutely. That needs to continue to be front and center. This is also an opportunity to plug the episode that we recorded with Cheryl Kuhn, our VP for the COA program, where we dove deep into the PFDD mantra and what that means and how to make that happen. But everything that we've done so far has been centered around those that have the diseases, live with the diseases, and stand to benefit from the treatments. That needs to continue, but needs to be even stronger. Because if we are going to work on decentralized trials with a lot of digital health technologies that need to be at the fingertip of the patient, an instrument that the people that participate in trials fill out on a tablet, that's at their fingertips. A smartwatch that captures some aspects about movement and ambulation across a space, that's at their fingertips. Glucose monitoring devices with insulin pumps, that's at their fingertips. So digital health technologies need to be at the fingertips of those individuals that participate in clinical trials. It's not just about understanding, which is fundamental, what aspects of the disease are key for them that actually have an effect on their daily living, but how the technologies should not be a barrier to their lives, because just because you have to fill out a form on a tablet doesn't mean that your life or your participation in the trial was made easier. It could have been made more onerous. How some devices can induce skin rashes, or how some devices get your limb tired for wearing them. Those aspects need to be front and center as we drive those innovations in that space. AI. People need to be able to interact, not just interact with the AI algorithms, but actually have an understanding of what's happening underneath in a way that matters to them, not just purely theoretical knowledge. And the empowerment to say, okay, I'm contributing these data. How can I be a champion for the data that I contributed to have maximal impact beyond the primary analysis of this study that I'm participating in? So it's all linked towards making sure that the humans that stand to benefit from this, that have the living experience of what it is to have these conditions, stay at the center of everything that we do.
So, Klaus, as we talk about the stakeholders that we regularly engage with, can you maybe discuss how we partner with academicians to really help them advance?
Yeah, there's two flavors of that. So across all the consortia, we bring in the top of the top academic expertise in that particular drug development area, because they have that built, and we need that expertise to guide the collaborations. But there's another way, and I want to talk about our Therapeutics Translational Accelerator Program, or TRAXA. There's going to be a future episode about that one, so plug for that one. Stay tuned. But essentially, if you think about drug development, typically the mind goes, oh, it's a pharmaceutical company that is developing some new product. But that's not the full story. There's a lot of really smart academicians that are looking at the true next innovation. And in academia, there's a space for that is more suitable for like that type of white space innovation compared to the classic pharmaceutical company model. But then those really smart academicians don't work in industry. For the most part, they don't have a pharmaceutical industry past. Odds are they've never had a formal interaction with a regulatory agency in discussing a medical product. But they're still very much interested in advancing those discoveries into a stage where they can be developed into products. And a lot of times that transition is typically called the valley of death, or the translational divide. Translating what happens in the lab or in the brains of academics into what can be tangibly done for drug development. And that translational divide or valley of death is so complex that we've set up a program through the generous support of the Cottrell Foundation to provide not just scientific and regulatory science guidance to those academic groups, but also provide them with some funding that can help them navigate the valley of death. And we've had a couple of rounds of applications and successful funding opportunities through TRAXA. And now we're seeing the benefits, not just in the sense of the individual programs advancing, but also the fact that we're getting the academicians to say, oh, we're really seeing the light. One analogy is that in certain cases, that translational divide feels like stepping barefoot into a dark room full of Lego bricks on the floor. And then TRAXA turns on the light, and they no longer have to hurt their feet every time they want to take a step, but they know how to navigate the different steps to get to the other end of the room. And that's pretty rewarding. And like I said, we're going to have an episode dedicated to that effort, but that's an exciting additional value component of how we drive our relationship with academicians.
So Klaus, because of the success that CPATH has had in really helping to shape and accelerate drug development here in the United States, we have been able to and been asked to expand more globally and be able to apply the methodology and the discipline that we've instilled here over 20 years to broader global drug development. So can you maybe talk a little bit about how we are supporting our global friends?
Yeah, exactly. So drug development is a global business. The generation of evidence through clinical trials and global studies in academia is a global affair. It happens all over the planet. And the drug approvals that are governed by each regulatory agency in a particular jurisdiction are also a global affair, because there's sharing of expertise and sharing of information across not just the regulatory agencies, but a lot of the way the companies need to file the documentation to the global agencies. So it's truly a global matter. Since the very beginning, every solution that we started developing through our collaborations to present to FDA, we also presented those solutions to the European Medicines Agency, EMA, and also in some instances to PMDA, which is the regulatory agency in Japan. But we also have participation in a lot of our programs from even more regulatory agencies: Health Canada, Swissmedic, MHRA, which is the agency in the UK, TGA, the agency in Australia, because it's truly a global matter. Now we have set up a dedicated nonprofit extension in the Netherlands, right next door to the European Medicines Agency, so that we not just continue to present the solutions that are developed in the US to our European regulatory colleagues, but that we also start generating solutions that are very relevant in that jurisdiction, to then not just present those solutions to EMA, but also present those solutions to EMA, so that the solutions that need to be developed in specific contexts truly have a global impact. And another plug for a dedicated episode with Cécile Olivier to dig into the global aspect of the work that we do. But it's truly not a one country or another jurisdiction. It's the global nature of drug development is truly global because diseases don't care about borders.
Well said. And the efforts that our European office have really been able to lead the charge in as it relates to tuberculosis and rare diseases and many other partnerships and opportunities that are in the pipeline there. We're really excited about the opportunity to really maximize our European efforts. And I think that's a good place for us to begin to draw to a close. So I'm going to put you on the spot. So as we are winding down 2025 in our 20th year, what would you like to say to kind of bookend these 20 years? And then what do you think is most exciting or most inspiring as we head into the next 20 years?
Yeah, okay. I'm definitely on the spot with that one. If there's a reflection over the past 20 years, is that paradigm transformations are possible through human collaboration, and that the model of having a neutral space where those collaborations and that dialogue can happen is incredibly valuable, even if at times some people may feel like it's stressful to hurt so many cats. But it's so worth it. So I would be a reflection on what we've been up to in the past 20 years. We've transformed paradigms through meaningful human collaborations. The next 20 years, what is exciting about the next 20 years? That we're looking at a completely new universe. Like we've left not just the galaxy, we've left our known universe, our observable universe, and we're stepping into areas where we're going to have to define, without lowering the bar of scientific rigor, but we're going to have to define a new way of how to think about generating that evidence for efficacy and safety. in a way that is centered around the human, centered around the experience of humans, but with a really deep understanding of what happens at the biological level so that we can meaningfully change the lives of billions of people around the globe. That's what makes me really excited about the future.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I appreciate you letting me put you on the spot, and for sharing your reflections on not only the last 20 years, but the journey ahead for CPATH and what we hope to do in order to really bring those treatments to patients where there's an unmet need. So with that, I will say thank you, and I think we can sign off.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. And thanks to the two most important assets that we have. Number one, our people, and number two, our neutrality. So thank you.
Did you enjoy this episode? Share it with a friend or colleague, or leave a review on iTunes, and help others discover and support our mission. We are welcoming guests with a range of experiences and viewpoints. The views expressed belong to the guests themselves. Learn more about Critical Path Institute at cpath.org. That's c-path.org. Stay tuned for our next episode coming soon, and thanks for listening.